The opinions made in this video do not necessarily coincide with that of Imaginary Goddess, or anyone else for that matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey guys, Ben Wheeler, the Mercenary King, here with episode 2 of Training with the King. Oh yeah. In my second video, I'm going to cover deck creation. Now, we can make entire video series about how to make a deck, how to smartly construct a deck, how to, put it there, and I'm going to cover a lot of it. I'm going to cover a whole bunch. I've got a lot to say about deck construction. And the way I do it, I'm pretty good at it. I figure, anyway, because most of the time I can find solutions, cheap solutions to problems that have expensive cards, if you get me. This is a general video for an Alfred Ezel deck. This is a Legion build with Alfreds and Ezels. It's pretty simple. Let me actually pull one of those here, and then one of these guys right here. I actually don't like this art. OG art's best art, but for the simplicity of the thing, I'm going to use the new art that you can get from the Vanguard into Leaders booster box. Is it booster half box? I don't know, whatever you call it. You can build almost this entire deck from that box. Okay, it's pretty good. The things I'm going to talk about here are going to be universal. I'm going to talk about grade 0s, grade 1s, grade 2s, and grade 3s. I'm going to talk about how they work with your strides, what abilities, what you should be looking for cards. I'm going to cover also other decks I've made in Royals, not to brag or anything about it, because I have 3 other decks, but it's, there's a lot you can do there. And by the way, these are the cards left over after taking about 200 from them, and I have 2 full pages in a 4-slot binder dedicated to them, as well as 2 pages of a 9-slot binder just dedicated to the promos. So there's a lot of things you can use here, and whatever's available, you want to get your hands on it. Now, before we go too far into this, I want to talk about winning images. If you've watched the series, and every smart card fighter who's starting out watches the series, I know it's very long, but you can skip out. You can watch season 1, which is one of the best written card series shows that's ever been, in my opinion. And then skip to season 3, where it gets really good, and then skip again to the Stride series if you want to hurt yourself. But the 3rd season of that's pretty good. Point is, watch the show, learn what they do, especially the 1st season. If you watch nothing else, just watch the 50 episodes of the 1st season. You'll get how to play the game, strategies, basic strategies that are still applicable to this day, as well as sort of introduce yourself to the characters so you know what people are talking about. But they talk about winning images. What it is how you win your games. Now, this is my definition. Other people might have other definitions about how to create your deck and all that jazz. But to me, winning image is an all-encompassing term. A philosophy, if you will. The philosophy of Vanguard is creating the best winning image you can, such that it wins as many games for you as possible. You might be like, hey, philosophy in a child's card game? Philosophy could be defined as a body of knowledge. It is the love of knowledge, but it is a body of knowledge that works together towards a goal. Usually it's the purpose of man, thought, experimentation, so on and so forth. In this case, the philosophy of the winning image is to create that winning deck that I mentioned earlier, to win as many games that you have as many times as possible. Now, how to say this? Because I've sort of gone off topic and I've gone back on topic. When you take the cards that you want to build your deck through, I want you to picture it. Your image of victory, your winning image. Is it powerful columns, hand advantage, card advantage? Is it a single irresistible vanguard column like you have in Dark Irregulars and Dimensional Police? Is it control over your opponent's field like Mega Colony or Kagero? There are as many winning images as there are grade 3s. Not all of them are equal, but they're equal enough that you can enjoy what they have. And they're equal enough that you can choose something like Alfred and Ezel, who are, let's face it, a little long in the tooth for the current meta, and still create something that's fearsome out of it. Now, this deck isn't going to win you very many tournaments with what's out there, but it'll give you a chance. And all you need is a chance. Everything else sort of goes from there, yes? So let's do what I said earlier. Let's picture it. When in the show they say you're standing on the planet Krei, and they talk about your Vanguard and how you are the Vanguard and how these things will fight for you, so on and so forth. We're standing on the planet Krei. I'm across from you in a dojo. Everyone who watches this video is sitting across from you somewhere or other. Attentive or not, doesn't matter to me. On the table in front of you is the card. The cards. You know the ones. You flashed, when I said the card, a card must have flashed into your head, because that's how psychology works and how people do it, is if you plant an inspiration in their mind, so on and so forth. But whatever image that is, be honest. Think about it. Hold it in your head. It is a card that you can use. Either it's the Alfred and Ezel that we're talking about here, or some other thing. Doesn't matter. When I'm talking about decks and how to get the combos going and a few other things like that, and this deck isn't very combo-y, but there's a one or two in here, because I made sure to include, sort of like one of everything in here. Don't lose track of the card or the image that you're thinking of. We are training. Eventually you'll have to go out on your own. Then my next video is going to be about choosing the right deck for you. It's something that you'll have to, in the end, take control of yourself. Players and people who just sort of go around there and never really develop and never go off on their own and never create new and powerful things of their own never go anywhere, never get anywhere. Some of the most powerful players around are ones who have developed a trick. Now that trick has become net decking, just because they won a tournament, and so now it's kind of everywhere. But that one trick got them the victory. You've got to find your own tricks or bring in something new for the old tricks. And me personally, I can go away. I don't like net decking, but I will if I have to. There's all kinds of things I could do with just these cards. Like from these cards alone, after the 200 odd good cards are taken out of it, I can still create some interesting stuff. And you can too. You just have to study and apply yourself. And that's what I'm trying to do. The previous episode was an introduction to Vanguard in general. If you're watching this video, you must have an interest in it. What I am, what my goals are, and what you can expect were all talked about previously. And of course I'm continuing to discuss them now, but I'll always have to discuss a little bit for it. The training begins now. Submit yourself to the philosophy of the winning image. Focus on it, visualize your victory, and let's get to work. Now, just having Phantom Blast or Abysses aren't going to win you tournaments. You have to have a solid deck in all the trimmings. Grade 0s and 3s have to work towards the winning image. I'm going to describe a series of grades to you that work best. You can work on it later when you get experience, but again, this is all generic. Even though I'm going to have cards that combo with these guys only, I'm still going to describe things that are going to be, the concepts that they entail are applicable to Revengers as they are to Harry, as they are to oh my goodness, Regalia. And my next vids are going to be even more complex here. Remember, this is training. I'm going to keep you guys moving forward. I will never push us back. But don't worry about the complex stuff later. We need a working deck. Like this one kid, I gave like 4 cards to. Okay? Most of them weren't even worth $2. But at the same time, all of a sudden, with just the inclusion of his deck, and I taught him how to play a bit and all that jazz, he started going from like 0-4 to 1-4 to 2-4. And I'm pretty sure that once he has a good and complete deck all put together, he'll be pretty powerful. But he needed to start somewhere. He needed a halfway decent deck so that he can start winning things, gaining that confidence and gaining that momentum. You need that as well. Why did we choose King of Knights Alfred and Vanguard of the King of Knights Ezel? Both of these guys are pretty generic. They have simple abilities that work almost all the time. They both encapsulate quite a few different concepts, from striding to legion to sort of archetype deck building, that sort of thing. You know, there's a lot there with these two guys, and I'm going to use it to teach you guys. Soul blasting, counter blasting, so on and so forth. So we know the cards are going to put in there. Let's talk about the other parts of the deck. When you have an idea for a deck, one of the first things you need to think about is the trigger lineup. Now you might say, but Ben, what about the grade 1s? What about the grade 2s? What about this? What about that? Those things will actually sort of fall into place here. The triggers are where you decide how aggressive or in what way is your deck going to be aggressive. How aggressive your deck is and in what ways it will be aggressive. Now, let's say that because these guys can summon out entire fields, let me actually describe their abilities here. This guy is Legion 2100 with the King of Knights Alfred. By Legion, I mean you put 4 cards from your drop zone into the deck and summon out an Alfred. And put them beside him like this. See the little thing here, right here? So that this lines up, and now they're legions, and they're legion mates. It's not gay, I swear. It's not gay. So they gain abilities, very powerful abilities, in fact. Ezel, what he does is choose a card from your hand with the same card name as the unit in the Vanguard circle, one of these two guys, basically, and discard it. Soul Blast 2, which is like if there's 2 cards in Soul, put them in the drop zone. If this unit is Legion, you can search your deck for 1 grade 2, 1 grade 1, and 1 grade 0 card. Call them the separate rearguard circles. Shuffle your deck. And then, if this unit is Legion, it cannot be boosted. And that's because of this guy's ability. This unit cannot be boosted. During your turn, this unit gets plus 2k for every Royal Paladin rearguard. So we can get plus 10k. Now, he gives that ability to this guy as well. He doesn't give the name, though, but he does give the ability. I'll talk about names in a bit. So, in other words, when this guy swings, he gets 2100 Legion. Unless you have 5 rearguards, he also gets plus 10,000 because 2,000 for every rearguard, 31,000 to Vanguard. And then this guy's last ability is, Counterblast 3. Search your deck for 1 grade 2 or less Royal Paladin, call it to our shuffle deck. Now, this guy's from set 1. And no, not GBO1, like the generation stuff. This is set 1. Like, first episode of Vanguard doesn't even have this guy until Kamui shows up or whatever. I don't know. Just after Kamui shows up, I think. No, wait, he has Gancelot first. My mistake. Point is, he doesn't show up for a while. And he's set 1. This guy has more Vanguard fights under his belt, and he is more useful than any other card in that set, except for Blaster Blade and the Perfect Shields. Everyone else is more or less garbage compared to this guy, except for Asura Kaiser and CEO, actually. Sorry. Him, Asura Kaiser, and CEO. Now you might say, what about Dragonic Overlord? Well, Dragonic Overlord has a reprint that's a break ride. Don't worry about break rides. I'll worry about break rides. We'll talk about them later in another episode. And also his card effects were useless as soon as Dragonic Overlord the End came out. He was actually pretty weak to begin with. But then it was early Cardfight Vanguard. And Cardfight Vanguard had things like Counterblast, where you search for 1 card, because they didn't actually know what to search for anymore, and how expensive things should be. And of course, you always used it on Blaster Blade or something. to do it. Kind of, sorry, I'm reminiscing a little bit. I didn't mean to say all that, but it's still pretty cool stuff, you know. Super old card, and not in this art. He's got like 2 different arts or something. I know he has one other art, but I think he has another one somewhere or other. Maybe just in Japan. So looking at this deck, I have a deck that allows for me to create a field without using my hand, as well as powerful Vanguard columns, and I can refresh the deck by putting in triggers and stuff from my drop zone into my deck from Legion. Now, that leads itself to an aggressive, not draw deck. Now, I'm going to put draws in this deck just because I want to show you what it would look like. But I can use crits or stands very well. Now, everything can be changed over time. You need to figure out what works best for you and your personal style. How can the deck synchronize to your playing style? Remember, you don't want to change yourself to play the deck, though you should if you're shitty. If you were a terrible player, and all players are terrible, as hashtag I am bad, and believe you me, there's no worse player than Ben Wheeler, the Mercenary King. I had to inflate my own ego by calling myself a king. Okay. No, okay, for Pete's sake. I am bad. And because I am bad, I compensate for my badness by making sure I always have the right cards in the right places at all times. In fact, one of the things I've noticed about my deck is a lot of it is me just manipulating things towards my advantage rather than going for straight power. Or I manipulate the power so that I gain some sort of weird advantage out of it, like I'm doing here. This guy gives power, I get weird advantage out of it. It's perfect. I actually played this deck for a long while before the new stuff came out, when this guy was just a promo. Now, let's say that your stands don't work. Move them to crits. Or have a 6 crit, 6 stand, which is what I do in my Regalia deck, and it works humorously well. So many people. You know, or let's say that, you know, your crits just aren't killing people enough because the deck itself is easily guarded. Well, what if you move yourself to stand so your rear guards give more pressure and your crits can do a little bit more work when you get them? The winning image is pretty simple. These two guys work together to create a field while being a good source of pressure. That's how you can define this winning image. And this deck is designed around that winning image, which I will go over, of course. Let's see here. And because it can create field, by the way, it also means I keep cards in hand. A lot of stuff can be done here. We just need to make sure that, you know, we do it right. Let's see here. We can pull anything we want from the deck. Keep a conservative hand. You know, it's not really designed to build hand, but just simply because you're not spending cards to build a field, that keeps your hand big. It's pretty great. You know, it's just, like I said, power, rear guards, big hand, because you don't put down cards. That's it. And by the way, you can use him as many times as you want. And it's funny, too. It is funny. There's a stand here that I don't have in this deck because for some reason I can't find one of my royal decks. But basically you can summon it, and then it goes back into the deck after giving things power. So it's like his ability, pop, pop, whoop, goes back into the deck. It's great. It's from the Ultimile Trial deck, by the way. But by the way, if you're curious on how to start your Vanguard collection and you're not sure, buy a trial deck. 2 trial decks, actually. Anything that has a Stride in it is worth buying, even the Neo Nectar one. So basically, or a Legend deck. Buy one of those too. So like you buy Ultimile, you'll have all the 2 Ultimile decks, you'll have all the cards you need, all the Ultimiles you need, etc. But don't worry about that. I'm showing you how to work this deck and build the deck yourself. So I'm going to stop it here, and we're going to build up for part 2. Hey guys, part 2. Every working deck has to have 16 grade zeros, at least. Most will have 17. A few oddballs will have 19. As many as 19 or 20. And I do have a deck like that with my Gear Chronicle. because of certain grade zeros that are so useful. It's ridiculous. In this case, however, we are just going to have 17. One starter, 4 stands, 4 crits, 4 draws, and 4 heals. I'm sorry for the terrible art for the heals. All the other ones are called in sick. And they all have abilities, and they all do things, except for the crits, because there's not really any point to having crits with abilities in this deck, because none of them work for Alfred. Sorry. And that's actually pretty good. In this era, we are starting to see more stand triggers, more draw triggers, even though this guy's from set 3 or something. The original set 3, by the way. And even a few heal triggers start to have abilities associated with them. You know, we want to make sure we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. Biggest bang for our murder buck. There we go. I wanted to say it like that. Murder buck. And why I say it like that? Because you want to murder the other guy. That's your winning image. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Murdering the other guy. That should be like a song somewhere or other. So, 4 heals minimum. And maximum. What's that? You don't think heals are really great in your deck? Tough shit. Play the heals. Play the heals. I have seen people ruin decks just because they didn't play the heals. In fact, some people can take extremely powerful decks, like Metal Borgs or Kagero or Link Joker, take out the heals, and they think it'll work fine, it'll work great. Eradicators, back when they were a thing. Oh, it'll work fine, it'll work great. No. Heals are the safety net which will save your life constantly. There is never, ever, ever a bad time for a heal to show up unless you're winning the game. And by the way, if you have anytime you have less damage than your opponent, you are winning. Now, let me reiterate. Play 4 heals. They could be 4 different heals. They could be those heals that like boost and then they go back into the deck. Doesn't matter. Play the damn heals. I know I'm repeating myself here, but the least noob thing you can do, and the way that you can start crawling out of the I am bad mentality, not the I am bad so I should be proud mentality, but from the I am literally a bad player mentality, hashtag I am bad, is to play 4 heals. It's okay. It's okay. I have to be harsh there, because I need you guys to understand. I have failed if you don't understand this, and you should understand that 4 heals are necessary in every single deck in Vanguard, except for one without triggers. And guess what? That's a legal deck. That's a legal deck. Can't play it. Bam. There. Solved it. Good job. Class over. No, it's not class over. So, every time your Vanguard attacks, he performs what's called a trigger check, based on the little symbol in the top left-hand corner, which in this case is a twin drive. Because there's a twin drive, I look at 2 cards from the top of my deck, and I do what they say. Oh, look, stand trigger. Each trigger has plus 5,000 on it that you can give, and an ability you can give. In decks with stand triggers, attack with the rear guard first. So this, boop, oh, stand trigger, oh, stand trigger. I demonstrated this in the last video. Not with the stands, though, just with crits. You can give it the power to your Vanguard or a rear guard. And if you're not going to hit, always give it to a rear guard. Excuse me. Damage trigger checks also do the same thing. So you take a hit. Oh, I took a stand trigger. Okay, so plus 5,000 to my Vanguard. Or a rear guard that you want to protect, but it better be a damn good rear guard. Let's go over the types of trigger cards. So there's 2 types of defensive cards and 2 types of offensive cards. And the defensive ones are your draws and your heals. Whoop, whoop. In this case, we're running 4 of each because, again, I kind of want to demonstrate this, that I'm worried about super high advanced deck construction here. This will work. Guaranteed. 4 heals. The benefits, it's a 10k guard. It prevents you from dying, because if you damage trigger check and it's your 6th or 7th or 8th damage, And, you know, you've got other heals, keep on going. If it's your 6 damage, heal it. Heal another card from your damage zone so you don't die. And by the way, there's no limits to how many times you can miracle heal, as it's called, though it'll be mighty suspicious if you do it more than 4 times. So 10k guard, it prevents you from dying. It can bring down your damage when you attack. You know, it's got the plus 5k that they all do. Let's see here. It also refreshes your counterblast. When you heal, it goes in face up. You can take off face down card out. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff for that. You always have 4. Always have 4. It's like this. It's like you post a hot picture of yourself on Facebook showing off your cleavage or your swole muscles or your, you know, keds or something. I don't know what the kids are up to these days. I can't believe we went over, like, from, like, broadswords to rapiers to guns. Who plays a gun anymore? Why can't these kids play with swords? Jeez. You know, it might make you feel good about yourself, those likes that you get, you know, feel good, boost your ego. Heals save lives. No amount of likes is going to help a starving child in Africa, but this will help you win a game. There, see how it is? Put it in perspective. Draws are the other defensive card. Sorry, I'm just having trouble with this since I'm having to use 2 hands for right now. I often honestly recommend having fewer draws than any other trigger. In this case, we're doing rainbow triggers where you have 4 of each type, but a lot of my decks I actually run fewer or more than 4. Very few of my decks I run 4. For cards that have heavy draw, like Oracle Think Tank and Genesis, I don't run draws at all, and I never recommend draws in either of those 2 clans, period. Unless it's the draws have a really great ability that you can use. And there's only like 1 or 2 of those. So, you know, don't think that this loophole means too much. So, why is it good? Well, if you ever need to discard a card, a draw is the best choice. A draw with an ability is an excellent choice for a rear guard. Its defensive, though, is only 5,000 compared to the 10,000, so if you guard with it, you know, it's only for things under 11k in this case. I'm sorry, under 16k in this case. The thing, and yeah, it's not as much guard. That's, you know, bad, but also pretty good in the sense that if it's something small, you don't have to waste 10k or spend a rear guard. You know, there's a lot of stuff there. And for things like, you know, cards like Metalborgs that say you can't use grade 1s to guard, these guys sort of don't help too much either. And, you know, when you can't pay for a perf with this thing, it just sort of sits in your hand as is wasted. Now, this one can go into the soul and give something plus 5k. Plus 3k. So it fuels this guy's ability, and it gives things power. So, there's some good things to it. You know, and also, draw literally does what it says. I can't believe I missed this. Basically, whenever you hit a draw trigger, and it's a trigger check, and it's legit, you draw a card, which can, by the way, draw you that perfect shield you needed. You know, that's good stuff. Draws do hard work, and they build up the hand, they build up the defense, they can do a lot. The offensive triggers are stands and crits. Now, as it stands, there's only 2 types of triggers. 4 types of triggers. Stands, crits, and draws and heals. Crits are in just about every deck under the sun. More crits are played than stands, and Bushiroad knows this. That's why they gave stands all kinds of abilities. Whenever you don't know what cards to put in your deck, and you're not sure what's going on here, play crits and see how it goes. You play crits and you're like, I'm not really getting full usage out of my rear guards. Put in some stands. I don't have enough hand. Put in some draws. I'm not miracle healing. You should put a heals in the first place. When in doubt, use crits and heals. So, what does a crit do? It gives you an extra damage. You swing with your Vanguard, you hit 2 crits, that's 3 total damage. That's wonderful. It's beautiful. It's fantastic. You know, Some crits have abilities. Like some go into the soul, give something plus 5k, and you get to draw a card. There's a whole lot of usage you can get out of crits. You just have to be able to see it and be able to utilize it well. If you have a powerful Vanguard-based deck like Metalborgs, you'll want to run 12 crit. Period. There's no need for draws. And same with Oracle Think Tank. It gets a huge hand. No need for draws or stands, because crits will do work, especially with Silent Tom. Now, here's the thing about these guys, though. They're only really 10k shields and an extra damage. They don't really do much boosting. They don't do much of anything. And you might say that about stands and stuff like that, but stands have abilities. Most of them do nowadays. So you got to be careful and make sure that you're choosing the right cards for the right situations. Very generic. And that's why they're good in all decks. So the next thing is stands. Honestly, for me, they're more of a tech than anything else. I have created stand-based decks with like Dark Irregulars and stuff like that, but they're honestly just not as good as they are when I run crit-based Dark Irregulars. But also that's because Dark Irregulars has kind of shitty support, period. So you got to be careful about this. It is super luck dependent now, and that's a bad thing. Like with crits, it's sort of just doing what you do faster, but stands, it requires you to go rear guards, vanguard, rear guard in that order if you're running a build like what I'm doing. If you don't do it like that, you're wasting time. Again, one of the things it does though, when it restands rear guards, that's another chance to get on-hit abilities going. And that's a good thing. Like this deck doesn't really have on-hit ability. Well, it does have on-hit abilities. Like if you hit a Vanguard and your Vanguard's in Legion, you get to draw a card. That's a good on-hit ability. And let's say I swing and a miss with this, so for, whatever, I restand it, it's 13k, but that'll still hit every Vanguard under the sun that doesn't have a trigger on it. And that's great. It's another card in hand. And let's say it hits, I draw another card. It just doesn't, there's no downside to it. As well as the abilities. For example, the ones I've chosen here is Sarugal. Is when this unit is placed on rearguard, and you have 3 or less cards in hand, and you're at G-Break 1, see what I did there. When this unit is placed on rearguard until end of turn, it gets the ability, at the end of your turn, draw a card, return this unit to the deck, shuffle deck. So we can actually, let's say that we have 4 cards in hand, 4 cards in hand, pay the ability of this guy's Legion, summon this card, because when it's placed on rearguard behind these guys, because these guys don't get a boost, the ability goes off, we'll draw a card. This ability essentially becomes just 2 Soul Blast. That's pretty great. There's also a card that gives plus 3k to things, then returns to deck. That's also a fantastic choice, but not one I had available to me here, simply because I didn't have the cards available. They were in my other deck, and my other deck is somewhere. Now, I just want to show off a few things about my other decks that I've done. For a deck that's based around giving immense amounts of power to rearguards, I run stands. What this does is this retires and searches out a grade 1. I don't use too many of him in this deck because he's too much of a minus. This chick goes into the soul, plus 3k. It's a cute little draw trigger. Pixie Assault Captain, attack! Jewel Knight, Hilmi. And the start is Milanus, but that doesn't matter too much. So that's the sort of thing I built there. Now, for this one, I built a different type. You see here, I have 4 stand triggers, 8 stand triggers, 1 set of crit triggers, and 4 heals. And it's healing Pegasus. It's great. Actually, a lot of my, for some reason, my Royal Paladin decks use stands a little bit higher than everyone else's. And that's mostly because I have some really great ideas when it comes to like stand decks with this one. Like this one also gains a lot of power, and it also has on hits like this guy, who on hit gives something 5k. Choose one of your other rear guards, give it plus 5k. These guys, when Legion, give plus 5k. This guy does it, on command. There's a whole bunch of different things that you can do here about power. This one's a more simple deck designed for beginners. Now you might say, why don't I start with this one? Well, because it only does one thing. It just gives power. And I don't want to do that. I want to cover all the concepts I can and see how they work together to create something great. Because honestly, that's a better experience when you're trying to train than just saying, okay, here's how you get Phantom Blast or Abyss off every turn. Win, win forever. That's just not how it works. Now, I've talked about the triggers, and I've talked about what I'm doing. I'm doing rainbow triggers, that's the term. The starter... Oh, wait, sorry, I almost skipped something. The triggers depend on the deck composition. What is your winning image that you will carve your name in the card fighting Olympus? Well, we're working on it. Don't worry about it. We're worrying about creating you that basic deck based around the cards of your winning image. We'll be carving your name in Legend after this. I started out, just like you, figuring out all these concepts. Barely able to keep my damage zone separate from my drop zone. Let's talk about starters real quick. Now, for starters, honestly, there's a whole bunch of different choices. Just so you know, I'm using, how many? Just a second, let me calculate. 3 times 16... No, 4 times 16, because I have 4 now. That's 24, 64? Yeah, wait, yeah, no, that's 2 to the 4th power? Yeah, so it's 64. Okay, how many triggers are left in Royal Paladins? Plenty of choice, by the way. Still plenty of choice. I could make 1 more set of heals. Okay, looks like I've just got 1 more set of heals, so that means I can create 1 more deck. And I guess I'm going to run a Jewel Knight deck, but I'm not going to do that for a while, okay? Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to do that for a while. But let's talk about starters. Now, the starter I've chosen out ahead of time is Guidepost Sage Elrond. Hubbard. Partly because he comes from the booster. He's a rare. He's easy to get. He's relatively recent. He has Forerunner, which means that whenever he's ridden over by a grade 1, you pull him into a rearguard slot. Counterblast 1, put this into Soul. If you have a Vanguard with Alfred in the card name, search your deck for 1 grade 2 or less card not named Elrond, and call it to an open R, shuffle your deck. So basically, you can go into the deck, you can take out whatever card you want. And some of these cards have abilities. Some, when they're placed, activate abilities. It's pretty great. He does a lot of work. He's also based on the Alfred archetype, pseudo-archetype. And by the way, an archetype is a series of cards that require your Vanguard to have a certain name on them. And I call it a pseudo-archetype because there isn't really so much Alfred support as there is support for Royal Paladins, but they just require Arthur. Any type Alfred. Any type of Alfred. And besides, this deck can actually run a whole bunch of different stuff here. There's no grade 2 Alfreds, by the way. There's just grade 3s, but don't worry. That isn't important, really, to this, to what we're doing here. So starter-wise, we have a whole bunch of different ones. Like, we have some Jewel Knight starters, like this guy. When your other unit is placed on rearguard, if you have 3 or more, the unit that was placed gets plus 3k. That's a pretty good ability for this guy. This guy is when this unit is ridden by a certain grade 1, this case Planetal Dragon. He looks top 7 for a grade 2, rides it, puts it in hand, shuffles deck. That's not a bad card. It could also be a grade 3. Now this is a fun little guy, Jump Call. If you have 2 or more grade 1 or less rearguards, if this unit is in the front row, it gets plus 5k and intercept. That's pretty funny. And it's not even on any turn, it's on your opponent's turn as well. This guy's boosting, and if you have a certain type of Vanguard, you can put him in the Soul and draw a card. This is a card that you could use Seeker Heartme when your Vanguard Legions. This unit gets plus 5k until end of turn. Some Jewel Knight stuff, some Jewel Knight plus 3k to things. Seeker searches for a Blaster Blade Seeker. Plus 1k for every other Bruegel. Generic. By the way, generics get plus 1k compared to everything else. And then this is a shitty card. And this card's top 5 for a grade 1. Ride it if you've got it. shuffle deck. You know, there's a whole bunch of different choices. This one is actually a not bad choice, Milanus. If you can get him at least, you're fine. He's Counterblast 1, G-Break 1. Put it into your soul. Search for a grade 2. Call it to rearguard shuffle deck. The other one is like a AK booster. And then I use Elrond in my other deck, which is also an Alfred deck. But it's very, very complex since I'm mixing Blaster archetype, Alfred sub-archetype. Sometimes people call it a sub-clan. I don't like that ability, that term so much. It only really applies to the leaders, honestly, because their thing is so far different. Just doing something more efficiently for having a certain Vanguard name does not make you a sub-clan. At all. No. But having an archetype based on a name is. You know, so it does all these different complex things, and I'm actually kind of glad I don't have it there, because I could spend an entire session talking about that deck. Okay? Just because I worked really hard on it to get it all working together. Alright, so that's all the grade zeros that we need to talk about. So remember, if you take anything from it, try to play more aggressive crits and stands with abilities, and play 4 heals, and have a starter that does something. Because it does something, a lot of my deck will work a lot better. If your starter does nothing or is shitty, your deck will have a lot of problems. Alright. I think that covers it for this. Let's do part 3, grade 1s. Now, part 3, grade 1s. Again, this should all be one video. So for grade 1s, they're just as important as every other part of your deck. Now, you might be saying that, but it's like, man, well, why did we start with the triggers then? Well, because that's how I think. That's how I do things. When you start with the triggers, you know the sort of aggressive level that you want from your deck. You know whether you want a lot of draw. You know that you're going to run 4 heal. You know whether you want stands or crits. And you want to know whether you want your starter to work with this guy, or do you want to do him something else like Milanus? Something more specific like Milanus. It's just up to you. And you got to figure it out right. And you have to sort of see how your deck will go. Now, for me, I like grade 1s because they're... what they do is they boost. For some reason... hold on. What was it? Oh yeah, no, I'm on schedule. Damn. They boost, and because they boost, they give 7k, or 6k, or in some cases 9k, or even 12k. See how this is escalating? More power to your Vanguard, based on the circumstances. And also to your rear guards. And to me, I actually build my grade 1s, zeros, my grade zeros are based on what I expect the deck to be. My grade 1s and grade 2s are actually separate creations that I make to make complementary, but I don't make everything slavish to this or the other way around. It doesn't really work out very well when you say, okay, I'm going to make the grade 2 super badass, but I'm not going to do anything with the grade 1s. No, well, that doesn't work because it doesn't, that doesn't make anything out of your grade 1s. All of a sudden, you're just creating generic wasted slots that could do something, but they don't because you're an idiot and you're bad. But a deck that has grade 1s that do something and work with their grade 2s is automatically good. See how I'm doing this. Now your grade 1s, now because we already know your grade 2s, grade 3s, we actually have a slot that we don't need to worry about. Because sometimes when you're playing like Victor or a card that only has like one card with it and no like grade 3s that work with it, you could be like, I'll play this terrible thing, or I'll play another thing that's even better. Well, that cuts away from how the card that you're picturing works. Everything must be complementary towards your winning image, or your deck is failure. All these cards work towards that winning image. I will show you how. Boosting, so you attack, 12k to your Vanguard. Then you boost, it becomes 19k. But here's how you do it. You attack, boost, 19k to your Vanguard. assuming 16k to your Vanguard, assuming that the stuff is met. Boosted power to this guy. He gets plus 3k when he attacks the Vanguard. So that's how it works. One of the things that'll really screw with your mind is that if this guy is removed somehow, his boost is not removed. So after basically when you attack, there's a brief boosting phase that you can choose whether or not you want to boost. And as long as you choose to boost, you're good. Now, I'm simplifying it here. This deck doesn't play games with its boosters. However, there are decks that do. Heaven help you if you find one of them, and don't hesitate to ask a judge about shenanigans, i.e. cheating. There are all kinds of crazy combos you can do with your grade 1s, and I'll cover some of them in later videos. Let's see here. I'm pretty much going to have to make a video about cool shit you can do with your Vanguard boosters and stuff like that, guaranteed sometime in the future. Because the rulings are crazy. Attack, boost, abilities, and then boost isn't turned off once you boost it. Let's see here. Now, every deck needs 4 Sentinels. A Sentinel is what we call a perfect shield, or in some terrible cases, a quintet wall. Quintet walls are bad. Don't play quintet walls. Play perfect shields. What do perfect shields do? Well, let's talk about the original perfect shield, all the way from set 1, Flash Shield Assault. Choose a Royal Paladin from your hand and discard it. When this unit is placed in the Guardian Circle, you may pay the cost. If you do, your Royal Paladin cannot be hit until the end of that battle. Now, that's good. That's all you need. There's some different versions of it where it has Sentinel, and it used to not have the Sentinel thing right here where you're limited to 4. Now there was a ruling where you're limited to 4 Flash Shield Assaults, where you're limited to 4 berries, but they eventually solved it by calling them Sentinels. Now, this more or less says the same thing. I've got another one here, which is the most recent release, Hope Keeper. Choose a card from your hand, discard it. When this unit is placed in the Guardian Circle from hand, you may pay the cost. If you do, choose a Vanguard, and only a Vanguard, that is being attacked, and it cannot be hit until end of battle. The old set original versions of Perfect Shields are slightly better than some of the new ones that don't have abilities, in the fact that they can guard rear guards. I know that doesn't sound like too much, and you might not never want to guard a rear guard, but sometimes you have a rear guard, it's super important, keep it alive. Sometimes it's not super important, let it die. You're really going to have to check it out. But the trade-off for this card is that it does have another ability. G-Break 1, Brave. This ability is active if you have 3 or less cards. And by the way, 3 or less cards when you activate the ability. So when this unit is placed on rearguard until end of turn, it gets plus 2k, and Counterblast 1, you may pay the cost. If you do, return this unit to your hand. So like with things like the Stand Trigger and others, you could summon it with Ezel when you have like 1, 2 cards in hand, and then all of a sudden this chick can return to hand, so you have a perfect shield guaranteed for the next turn. Great stuff. Now, by the way, let me show you how many grade 1s we have running around here. And this is after, by the way, all my decks have about 13 grade 1s. So that's 39 grade 1s, sorry, 52 grade 1s, 39? It's 52? Yeah. 52 grade 1s removed from the deck, and we still have another 50-something, or even more, to work with, and several of them have their own builds. By the way, some other options that I thought about but didn't include. Soul Blast 2, Unflip 2 damage, Pack Gall. AK boosters for power. No. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff here for Seekers that I just don't use anyway, because most of them are actually pretty terrible. Tranquil Unicorn, Soul Blast 1. Give something plus 5k. This is part of the ride chain that I was talking about earlier, and I will be doing a video on ride chains. Rengal, when this unit is placed on rearguard from deck, if you have a Royal Paladin Vanguard, it gets plus 3k. So every time you summon a Rengal, he gets plus 3k. Not like for every one that's summoned, but when you summon it, all of a sudden he's a 10k, guaranteed. Good card. Starlight Unicorn, another card from the original trial deck. When it's placed on R, give something plus 2k. Here's an interesting card. Knight of Power Charge. Retire this unit, G-Break 1. Choose any number of cards from your hand. Bind them face down at the end of the turn. Put those cards bound by the effect of its hand. Draw a card. Interesting card. Interesting card. Snow goals. Plus 1k for every other snow goal. Whoop. AK. So for... By the way, these are all just common so far. This one's a 9k booster that can't be killed by anything. That doesn't, like, choose something else first. It cannot be chosen by retire effects. This is Lake Maiden Lien. Tap and choose a card from your hand, discard it, draw a card. This actually accelerates Legion. Again, a very, very classic card. Very good stuff. Let's talk about rares real quick. This one gives plus 1,000 to Alfred. However, because I have Ezel, I don't need her. She also can't be chosen like the other chick. This is what's called a Stride Enabler. What this does is that you can pay it to pay the cost to Stride. Seeker. Here's a card that's interesting. Hidden Sage Miron. When it's summoned, Soul Blast from the deck, Soul Blast 1, draw a card. Now this deck is very funny. Sage of Guidance Xenon. When this unit is placed on rearguard, if you have a Royal Paladin, look at the top card of the deck. Write it if it's the same grade as your Vanguard. And that's all the ones that really apply here. Now you might be like, Ben, why'd you go over this stuff? Why did I go over? Oh, right, to show you what your options are. And again, those are the terrible options that I haven't included in anything yet so far. There's things like Milky Way that gets plus 4k, 10k booster, 9k attacker. This one's fun. Gigantech Shot Putter. Counterblast 1, retire, choose 2 units plus 5k. All of a sudden, you're pumping them up for costing cards. Other cards from my Seekers deck include things like Isbuzard, which when you're placed on rearguard and your Vanguard's Legion, plus 4k. So he'd work with them. Or this Seeker guy who summons out cards with Seeker tapped. Or this chick who is a 10k attacker if you have 4 or more Seekers running around. You know, there's a lot of things you can do with the grade 1s based on what your deck's going for. What we've chosen for the deck is 4 Toy Poogles, 4 Perfect Shields, 4 Toy Poogles, 3 Junos, and 2 Scouting Owls. Now, let's talk about Toy Poogles. 4 Toy Poogles. First off, when this unit boosts, if you have 2 or more grade 3 Royal Paladins, period, Vanguards or Rearguards, it gets plus 3k. Once this guy legions, I will always have 2 grade 3s. So this guy, and by the way, it does also count. Oh no, it does not count strides. But that's okay. Don't worry about it. There'll be other things to compensate for his loss of power. So as soon as the Legion goes off, he's plus 3k every time he boosts. Why? I happen to be running 12k attackers and other cards that benefit from just a little bit of a boost. Then we have Swordsman of Light Junos. When another unit, in other words, let's say that I have a Junos out and I place another Junos, when your other unit, so in other words, this guy, when the other guy is placed on rearguard circle due to an effect of one of your cards, these guys, if you have a Vanguard with Alfred in the card name, plus 5k. So it becomes a 12k booster attacker. That's good. That does work. Finally, we have Scouting Owl. Soul Brave, G-Break 1. So this is a late game kind of guy I'm putting in here as a tech. Soul Blast 1. At the beginning of the guard step that you battle, your Vanguard was attacked. You may pay the cost. If you do, move this card to the Guardian Circle tapped, plus 5k. So he is an emergency 10k defense to keep you alive for a little bit longer when you have 3 or less cards in hand. So let's just go over it real quick. I've got 7 cards that deal with power, 2 cards that deal as attack to keep you alive, and 4 perfect shields. Now, that, if you were keeping up with the numbers, that's 13. The best number for grade 1s in Vanguard is 13 grade 1s, 12 grade 2s, 8 grade 3s, 17 grade 0s. So that's our 13 grade 1s. Now the numbers are, if you have that sort of ratio there, you will hit all your cards about 87 or more % at a time, up to 90 or more. depending on how else you build your deck around. If you're building a deck that has um, a deck that has a ride chain in it, so you search out the grade 2 or whatever, that boosts it to like 95% or more. But just from your opening hand, 80 something percent, that's pretty good. And that's really great for newbie players who don't really know how to handle card advantage and all that jazz. They can really work on it. So they boost, they gave off various abilities. My personal favorite is the by the way, 4 perfect shields. Imagine that 4 perfect shields are always there. My favorite thing right now is 4, 3, 2. Tech, side, main. Basically, I want powerful columns, so I'm running him. I also want him powerful columns, so I'm running him. Then I'm worried that this deck might not have the juice it has to protect itself later on, so I'm running 2 of him. That's how it's working. Not much else to say about it, though. There's also 4, 3, 3, 3, or 4, 4, 4, 1. Now, grade 1 wise, there's a whole bunch of different choices here. There's some Blaster Blade support. There's some other things that can give you all kinds of combos. You just have to figure out the right ones and work towards it. I'm choosing one that's focused on non-stride, non-legion abilities for my grade 1s, just because I want them to work as much as possible. Scouting Owl is a tech. I don't depend on Scouting Owl, but Scouting Owl could save your life. So that's really what it comes down to your grade 1s. You want to choose things that will do stuff for you and benefit your other cards. And you'll know this instinctively once you get good at this. Some people advocate working from the grade 3s to grade 2s to grade 1s down. I actually advocate working my way from the top to the bottom back up. Because then you'll actually discover that you'll begin to think of things. Oh, well, this 9K will work pretty great with this 12K. And this 12K booster attacker will work well with this Swordsman of Light Blaster Axe Growl, who will give things plus 5K based on what Junos does. So all of a sudden, that turns into a 26K column. Pretty great stuff. 23K with Toy Poogle. There's just a lot of things you can do here. A lot of it is benefits from the calling and the legioning. So it all sort of flows back into Alfred, working towards Alfred. If I had a diagram, you would see lines flowing from these cards to Alfred, in that they both give each other benefits and both synergize with each other in fantastic ways. Now I'm going to stop the video, work for part 4, which is the grade 2 lineup. Oh, oops, I almost forgot one last point. By the way, you don't have to limit yourself to just having 13 grade 1s. You can have as many as you like within reason. However, I recommend staying within the band of 12 to 15, otherwise the numbers will get too hairy and too messed up for you to guarantee yourself a good hand. Now, some crazy high-level advanced decks like Crazy Diamond or Mega Colony or something like that with Jirafa can work a different registry and series of numbers, but we'll not worry about that, will we? Because that's not to do with Alfred. Alfred needs a nice generic thing. Now, if you've got a great idea that will work all the time, do it. Your winning image does not define what I do with my cards and what you do with your cards. However, it will change to see how it will work out, with your own stuff, your own play styles. Even though I'm very much against everyone's a special snowflake, in card fight cards, you are a special snowflake when it comes to your decks. Make the deck that suits you. Alright. Talked about that. All grade 1 serve the winning image. Most things are not Laurel. Laurel wins games. Now, most cards, by the way, are not going to be deal breakers in the booster set, actually. In fact, you'll see more of those in the grade 2 lineup and the grade 3 lineup than anything else. However, there's a card called Laurel. He wins games because whenever your Vanguard attacks, tap 4 units, restand your Vanguard, attack again. That's why he wins games. It's It's horrible. It's just bad. All right, let's talk about part 4, grade 2s. All right, guys, we're talking about grade 2s now. Now, grade 2s, you generally want somewhere between 10 and 14, depending on what your other cards are. They're often more underutilized than any other part of the deck, because people are like, oh, I'll just put powerful cards in here and they'll do work. Well, it's like, sure, 12k attacker, for Burning Horn for Draconic Overlord, yeah, sure, 12k attacker, it's all right. But really, what other cards can you do here? All these cards can do things. I only have one card that's pure power all the time, and that's this guy. He's a 12k attacker. This unit also gains power, but he gains more power than the other guy, and he can combo up to hit multiple stages. And by the way, a stage is a set of 5k to basically allow your Vanguard to hit. So let's talk about it real quick. It's pretty elementary, though. There are only 2 reasons to have grade 2s, besides riding, obviously. Main rearguard the offense and intercepting. At grade 3, your other grade 3s are too important to not pay for stride or perfect shields. You gotta use them to pay for stuff, because they have no defensive cost. They're the perfect choices. So, all your grade 2s must be useful in some way. Now, back in the day, you didn't have to do this. You could have 10k defense, you could have all kinds of stuff like that. There's just a lot you could do with it, but not anymore. Now they have to do things, because your opponent's rearguards, by the way, will be able to do things. And he will use it to destroy you. In fact, the only reason I'm running this guy is just to demonstrate simple abilities on G-Break, attacking a Vanguard for getting special abilities, and the fact that I can't run more of this guy. The 14k guy when you summon something else out there once per turn. So you could have something that retires on hit. I've got cards that draw on hit. And you can have cards like this guy who does things when he's summoned. It's all useful. None of them are generic, and none of them will fall off sometime late in the game. We're maximizing what we can out of Alfred's superior calling, that's what it's called, abilities. Let's see here. In a lot of Royal Paladins can gain power from being called, like this, Grawl. Also, summon out more things, like this guy, on hits. There's just a lot there to work with. One of the things also we can do is intercept. You see this little symbol in the top left-hand corner? Oh man, the light's getting dim. But that's okay, it's nearly night. What he can do is, if your Vanguard is attacked, this guy can jump from the front row in front of him into the Guardian Circle and be like, no, I'll take the bullet. And you can block 5k. And there's also 10 and 15k blockers nowadays. It's pretty great. One of the funniest decks I ever made for Link Joker uses a 10k blocker, where you lock one of your own units and jump in front of it, so it's a 15k shield. And with cards like Scouting Owl, your guards just going to get better and better. And calling it from the rear guards, when you can Soul Blast and discard a card to summon rear guards back out, isn't much of a cost from you, if you do it right. So it can be a -1, depending on how you called it, but it saves you cards in hand. A 5k is better to be intercepted than it is to spend a 10k guard. One of the better decks I've made for Mega Colony used cards that you can't intercept. So I've just put it for a 15k defense. So it's like, okay, I can spend one interceptor, but they couldn't do it because he couldn't guard with interceptors when that guy attacks. Royal Paladins have some of the best grade 2 support around. And that's true from like here to like here-ish. Yeah, right here. It's all grade 2s. And they all do different abilities. A lot of them summon out of the cards. Some give power. Some like, let's see, this one. It's a 10k defense for Jewel Knights. Let's see this one. It's an Alfred that summons out other Alfreds to ride for whatever reason. It's kind of terrible. This one is when your Vanguard Legions give some Seekers plus 4k. There's just a whole bunch of different stuff. This guy summons Snow Ghouls for discarding a card. We could just keep going, guys. A lot of options here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the abilities now and why I chose the cards I did. Now, I don't want to go over all the grade 2 stuff because, honestly, there's a lot of abilities to go over, and some of them are rather obvious. This 7K summons out other grades. Grade 1s or 2s when it's called to rearguard. That's good, but it isn't what we want in this deck. We don't want luck, really. We want to be able to control everything about this deck. We want to use all the levels of our game, okay? So, I have, as a tech, 2 Swordsman of Light, Blaster Javelin, Larouses. Choose 2 cards from your hands and put them into your soul. When this unit is placed on rearguard, from anywhere, from hand, from this guy, there's a lot of choices out there. If you have a Vanguard with Alfred, you may pay the cost, put the 2 into the soul. Search your deck for up to 2 High Beasts and call them the separate rearguard. Shuffle your deck. Now, what's a High Beast? This guy's a High Beast. His ability is when this unit hits and your Vanguard is Legion, draw a card. Then we also have, where is he? Scouting Owl. So in other words, you can summon 2 Scouting Owls for 20k shield later on in the game. And because you put in 2 cards from the hand to the soul, all of a sudden, that becomes the fuel for this guy's ability. See what I said about synergies? Oh, High Beast, so you don't want to waste it on him. High Beast, though this guy you actually do want to waste it on. Let's say that you summon him and you only have 4 cards left in hand. Put 2 cards into the soul, summon out 2 of these guys, put them here, activate their abilities, and then when they return to the deck, you get to draw cards. So you don't lose anything on this. Don't lose any power, anything like that. Also, Margles. This is a bad choice, but it's a choice that you can make. Okay? I know I'm a little off, guys. Also, ooh, yeah, that's right, Toy Poogle. Hey, Toy Poogle. He's just a 9k booster, and he'll be there forever, and he can actually win you games. Because let's say that you put it behind this 12k guy. That's 21k. You put a couple triggers on him. That's 31k. Maybe your opponent can't guard that, and I'm at 6 damage. Yeah, 5 damage, yeah? Alright. Then we have the 12k attackers. G-Break 1 with this unit attacks and Vanguard plus 3k. So he hits for 12k. He can be found in the Ultimate trial deck, so he's pretty useful. Now this is from set 16. When this unit attacks, hits a Vanguard, your Vanguard is in Legion, draw a card. So in other words, he can get you some on-hit draw. The perfect choice for stand triggers. Finally, we have 4 Growls. When your unit is placed on rearguard from one of your cards, if you have a Vanguard with Alfred, this unit gets plus 5k. So basically, you have one of him out there, and let's say a Junos, and plus 10k to this column. These guys are swinging for 26k plus triggers. It's great. They'll win you games. You see how I said that? They'll win you games because your opponent will have a harder time guarding because of how it all works together. Because all these cards in some way synergize with Alfred and his abilities and his state, they will do good work for you. They are cards worthy of being put into a deck. By the way, all the cards you have here for the grade 1s will hit above 21,000 on Grawl. You want your cards to hit 21,000. That's one. While it's not part of the winning image, it's still a goal to bring you victory. The winning image is summoning things out, giving them abilities, making sure they all work together. But the actual practical application isn't hitting above 21 to levels that your opponent cannot guard. And that's really all there is to it. There's a lot here going on with the grade 2s and the grade 1s, simply because our grade 3s have so much to offer our lower levels. Because both of these summon out grade 2s, 1s, and even 0s, and sometimes all 3 at once, there's a lot that can be done in those levels. And because I made sure that at all levels, I have choices to be able to be made, no matter what sort of thing I have. What's that? You're going from 0 to... Let's say that you don't have any soul, you have only 2 cards in hand, you can't use this guy's ability, well, use Alfred. Counterblast 3, summon out this guy. Put 2 cards in the soul. Summon out, maybe you need hands. Summon out these 2 guys. or summon out 2 Scouting Owls if you want to just live for another turn. There's no bad choices in this deck. There's no stupid combinations. There's just good combos that can work together to win you the game. We've already talked about the grade 3s, but let's say that we only want to play Alfred. How do we know what we want to play with him? What sort of build do we want to build? Let's look at the commons and rares. This guy's not really doing anything. The plus 3k. This guy's a limit break if you attack with him, plus 5k if he's on Vanguard, plus 2k otherwise. Margle, plus 2k. Whenever this drive check reveals a grade 3, plus 5k. Power. This is Counterblast 2 once you use place on Vanguard. Summon a grade 2, but if it attacks, plus 6k if it's got that. Here's an interesting card. Brave. Counterblast 1 with this unit attack hits a Vanguard. You may pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for 1 grade 2, call it to rearguard. Shuffle. That unit gets plus 2k. Shuffle your deck. So basically, like, this guy could work with Alfred, but the thing is, the Counterblast would be so heavy, we need rearguards, like, say, Packgall, to compensate for the fact that you're spending a lot of Counterblasts to summon units. See what I did there? Like, because the composition of our deck changed, so too does the rearguards. And, all of a sudden, the Roost might work, but all of a sudden I'm a little bit wary with running Cybergall Seeker. Cybergall Seeker. Let's look around a little bit to see if we have something to replace him. And again, I'm just going over deck building stuff because we decided to change our winning image. What can we do? Let's say if there's any... So, like, by the way, this is my Royal Paladin page because I had to pull stuff out to build this deck. Let's see what we can do here. No Legion. In fact, there isn't really much grade 2 except for my Knight of Twin Sword, which is when this unit attacks a Vanguard boosted, search your deck for another grade 2 not named Knight of Twin Sword, call it to rearguard. How about my promos? Let's see if there's any grade 2s there. Now, I've got a point to this about rarity and stuff like that, but we'll get to it as soon as we get to it. Oh, look, not very many grade 2s. In fact, there's just one. And he's terrible. He's Counterblast 1, choose another high beast, give it plus 4k. But grade 2-wise, let's look at the other things. I could take these guys out of this deck and run him. And whenever he hits a Vanguard, you can look at the top 5 for a grade 3 and put it into your hand. Or I could run another Brave unit. Which would work with our LaRousse. Shinegall. When this unit attacks a Vanguard until end of turn, plus 2k. And Counterblast 1, when this unit attack hits, you may pay the cost. If you do at the end of the turn, draw a card. That's a great card. That's a good card. That'll work in this new deck we're building. Then we have things like Starlight Violinist, which can summon out another grade 2. Looking at the Seeker deck, nothing really stands out to me. But, there's just a lot we can do. Like with my Royal Paladin deck that my main one, which is wherever, I can use the Blaster Blade support to create a solid early game power while waiting for my late game Alfred stuff to really work. You just have to think about it. How do the decks work with the grade 3s that I've decided to use with this deck? Because I have ways of not unflipping damage, but because I have ways of gaining card advantage, ways of utilizing whatever situation I might find myself in, as well as constant boosts to my power and other things like that, I really am prepared for a lot of different situations to create powerful columns with a powerful Vanguard column to defeat my enemies. Now, I'm going to cover one last thing, and then we'll finish up, okay, guys? And that's strides. So, strides, we have to sort of talk about a bit first because of grade 3s. What you have to do is you have to pay as many cards as it takes to get to grade 3. It could be 1 card, it could be, 2 cards or whatever. And so you pay the cost, put it in the drop zone, then you stride it, write it over your Vanguard circle. It gets the name and the power, and then various abilities go off. The grade 3s, as I've said so many times, are the seed of your deck. They will make or break your deck. Poor choices towards the deck and the grade 3s and making, like, let's say I didn't run any Packgalls in a deck that's super Counterblast heavy, but doesn't use any soul. He's kind of worthless because he can be summoned out by LaRousse. See what I did there? Um, it's poor choices will lose you games. Good choices will bring you victory. If everything's working towards a solid, sane mental image, you will win. Unless the other guy has a better one. Most of the powerful decks are on autoplay. They don't need as much skill. They don't. That's fine. Others have, sort of a personal self-sabotaging things for ways they don't understand. But, there's all kinds of things here. And some people are powerful enough that they might seem goofy or silly or stupid all the time, but then they'll, beat you into a pulp just because they decided to go serious, or because things went their way, or because that weird deck build they created is actually really powerful. It's just that, nothing ever came up perfect for them. And it came up perfect against you because you're bad and you couldn't stop them. Hashtag I am bad. There's a lot of things that could go wrong. The most powerful players do not need the most powerfully inexpensive decks to win. They don't. I'm a living testament to that. I won many games with my Mega Colony back in the day when we only had Set 4 and Cavalry of Black Steel. Now, I don't know if any of you new card fighters even know what the cards I'm talking about, or even the sets I'm talking about, but look at the card abilities, compare them to the stuff that came out later, and then breathe a sigh of relief that you don't have to play in that era, where you had Counterblast 3 for simple abilities that you could never use again unless you got super lucky. Yeah, I'm a bit resentful of that time, but things like Phantom Blaster Dark Diablo, Phantom Blaster Abyss, Draconic Overlord the Legend, Blue Wave, we could refer to those as S-Class, or whatever terminology you decide to use to describe the highest level of the meta. If we were to rank decks by your grade 3s, the most powerful would be easy decks, mostly. Now, some of the most powerful are not easy decks. Like, I'd say Metalborgs and stuff like that are medium decks because you have to set it up right, and you have to know how to play it. But they're still super powerful. Pale Moon is generally super hard, because you have to do it. So, in other words, easy, medium, intermediate, hard sort of deal. Medium and intermediate sort of interchangeable. Alfred and Ezel would be an intermediate kind of deck. Why? It's super forgiving. They're decently powerful, they have excellent combos, but at the same time, you do have to think about what you want to choose. Even though it's very close to being autoplay, it's not directly autoplay. And, you have to have a fighter's intuition to discover the right times for your cards to make sure that winning image goes off. This deck has power on a little card advantage, and it's got defense and a few other things. Using everything at once in the wrong times will hurt you. But if you get it at the right times, you'll discover that your opponent has no answer for it. It's an art. The faster you learn how to handle it, the better. A martial art, in fact. Hard decks are things that run high levels of complexity. Now, there's another level beyond hard, and that's called basically impossible, where you take a terrible, terrible card and build a deck around it. But don't worry about it. Don't worry about those things. This hard decks are things that didn't get a lot of support. They got the bad end of the stick from Bushiroad or anything else like that, or everyone else is too powerful, so that good stuff that came out would have been powerful 5 sets ago, but it's coming out now, so it's kind of like, eh. Other things just require too much skill for you guys to play. Now, certain decks, now I assume that you at least know the basics of the deck you want to play here. That card that's in your head that you're thinking about as I describe all these different concepts that may or may not have names, but I'm certainly trying to describe them to you. And if you're playing something like Murakumo, Mega Colony, Great Nature, and Dark Irregulars, I salute you. Good luck, you bold, beautiful bastard, because you're going to need all the help you can get. I know because I made Mega Colony for about 2 years before it got good. And other players like Dark Irregulars and Great Nature players, we're in a sort of golden age where all these different sets have gotten such great support that they can stand up as equals to Draconic Overlord, to Phantom Blaster Abyss, and all that other jazz. But it's still hard, and it's never going to get easy, no matter what they give us. They have good cards in them, but using them effectively will use more thought and skill than anything else you can play. But the payoff is that if you can master a Great Nature, a Murakumo, Mega Colony, or a Great Nature deck, and I don't mean, oh, I can beat people, I've mastered it. No, I mean master it. Like, when it comes to Mega Colony, I am one of the best players in the world. Period. I know all the combos, I know all the moves, I put the moves together, I grok it. I am singularly in tune with every portion of those decks, and I try to make them the best I can. And I keep reworking them until they're better and best they can be. It is a journey, but I can reasonably say that I've beaten all the local card fighters that play Mega Colony at my meta. I have beaten people I shouldn't have with Mega Colony, and a whole bunch of other things. And we could say clan leaders, blah blah blah, ha 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 ha. But it's it is something to say I have mastered something, I know the fullness of something, than it is to say I have beaten somebody with this deck, oh, I must be a master of it. Other people, like, for example, my good friend, the Comeback King Chansulin, he is that way around Dimensional Police. He knows the ins and outs of all forms of Dimensional Police. And while we may disagree over the fact of, like, whether we want to play the Metalborg that summons out a Metalborg in Legion, or we want to play, like myself, Daikaiser, we still understand. I still deeply respect the hell out of him for his ability to be able to know the fullness of the cards under his that he chooses to play. There's another guy, not Ursus. He plays Great Nature, and he is in the same thing. Now, keep in mind, he's young, and while he doesn't know much about any other clan, at least what I would call even approaching what he knows about Great Nature, I still respect him when it comes to Great Nature. That's it, though. I don't really, while he might have great ideas, he's not the guy I go to when I come for anything other than Great Nature. That we all go through separate layers. At one point, I was at that level. I was and am bad. Nick, the guy who plays Great Nature, is bad. Chansulin is bad, even though he is very good. I am very good. Nick can be very good if he's got his head in the game. There's a whole bunch of stuff here that doesn't, and maybe I shouldn't have used names or whatever, but he knows what I'm talking about, and he knows I'm his friend, and I've got his best interest at heart. If I was insulting him, I wouldn't mention him. The people if you're in this video and I mention a certain clan or whatever, and I say such and such is a master of it, and maybe I'm forgetting you or whatever, but I'm also saying that you are not as good in that clan as the other person. Not an insult. You are bad. Hashtag I am bad. And I didn't want to spend so much time talking about it, but it's one of those things where there's a lot of subtleties to being good at something and knowing the fullness of something compared to just sort of sitting there with a PBA deck winning a tournament, but then realize that you had to fight like some sort of Murakumo player, or some sort of Great Nature player, or some sort of Dark Irregulars player, or Mega Colony player on the way up. Realize that if those guys got to the top two, maybe those guys are better from you, but you played the better deck. And that should chill you, because eventually they'll decide they'll have enough of it, and they'll get the best deck, or they'll figure out how to get it even better, and they'll stomp you. Because if you went into their arena, they would win. Period. Now, some people, like in Mega Colony, it's actually a lot harder to say that because everything's just about equal. Everyone's running one of two decks because Mega Colony is the red-headed stepchild. But when it comes to like Murakumo and Dark Irregulars, there's at least 5 different Dark Irregulars deck you can make. Amon, Death Anchor, Legion, Char Harlot, and Bladewing. And they all have little subtleties to it. Great Nature, there's Big Belly Polaris, Chat Noir Focus, and sort of what I'm going to call generic Great Nature. Mega Colony is Machining and G, and sort of Giraffa, but not really. And then what was the other one? Great Nature, Murakumo is Yasui, Shiranui, oh wow, sort of generic Murakumo, Hayaki Vague, and By the way, with generic, I mean just sort of a medley or any non-focus sort of deal. Like Yasui is Yasui, Bandit Ape. Shiranui is defensive, super defensive. Yeah, and I just can't think of anything else for Murakumo, and I'm sure someone will correct me somewhere down the line. But, you can see that how they have so few builds compared to Kagero's Blade Master, Dragonic Overlord, the End, Dragonic Overlord, the Legend. And by the way, the End includes by itself Break Ride and the X. Blade Master, Dragonic Overlord, the End. The Legend, Dragonic Overlord, the Rebirth. There's a lot of Dragonic Overlords in here. Novel Vague, Lawbringer, Lawkeeper, Cruel Dragon, Chain Blast Dragon, various types of just stride decks, funnily enough. There are a lot of builds for that. And these are just the ones I'm pulling out of my head. And this isn't even scripted, by the way. These are just the stuff that's pulling out of my head. And, there's a lot. Oh, right. Perdition. And Perdition the Great. And, let's see here. Was there another one? No, okay, I'll stop there. The point is that I got to 11 decks. They have had... Oh, Amber Dragon. There we go. Sorry. 12. That just covers all the different subtleties to it. There's a lot of Dragonic Overlord and Kagero, but that's okay. You can build other decks, and interesting decks, and ideas, and stuff like that. But Dragonic Overlord's clearly better in Kagero, so that's just about all you see. Nowadays, I need to get back on script. I'm sorry, guys. I got off on a tangent. I feel very strongly about this. Remember, just because you play a hard deck and you lose, you are bad. But you have a better chance to get better than anyone else. Because once you master that deck, it is easier for you to master every other deck. As long as it's super hard. Now, impossible, by the way, that's like taking Brunhilde, or taking Death Anchor, I guess, would be an impossible one. Or some terrible card from the past, like Aleph, or Blazing Flare, or... let's see here. I'm just going through like various clans. Okay, like, running super generic cards that don't even do anything. Or things like Mandala Lord, or Mistress Hurricane. Decks like that are kind of bad, and they're overcosted or just not worth it anymore, and just making them good. Oh, Locks. There we go. You might say, alright, just wanted to cover that sort of stuff. Don't worry about impossible decks. If you can make it work, good job. You might say, Mercenary King. I hear and understand your every word, which is like honey to my ears and light to my eyes. Have my children. But what are we going to do with all this? I've been teaching you guys to build the deck. I expect you guys to go and take the techniques I've been demonstrating to build your own deck, like I've been saying this entire time. What deck do you want to build with what grade 3s? Is it within your skill level? Can you train yourself up to the skill level that you need to be? Learn how to handle your winning image. Make it your own. Review the deck. Review the deck. Review the deck. Make sure you have the best choices in that deck. Now, I know this is a long build-up, but let's talk about strides. Strides in this deck are not the goal, but the icing on the cake. Legion is the goal, and the icing on the cake. Well, no. They're more like the strawberries you put on top of it. For this deck, I have a recommendation for the strides. And that is 4 Holy Squire Dragons, 2 Ultimiles, 1 Samuel, and 1 Madu. What do they do? Madu is with you when you stride, by the way, you can choose what unit in the Legion you want to stride on and take the name of. What you do is you take Alfred, and it becomes a 10k, 15k. But of course, it will revert back to Ezel by the end of the turn. So you choose Alfred and Alfred's name, but you're going to be returning to Ezel. And it's going to be 1k less than it would have been. Dang it. I'm sorry, guys. I was so good with my card discipline. Ugh. But Madu, when it's ridden strode over a card that's 10k defense, it gains... you can gain a card, a grade 3 from your drop zone back into your hand. So basically, he's there if you have to pay an Alfred to get a stride going. So you return it back to hand. Samuel, what he does is Counterblast 2, if you have 5 or more Royal Paladin rear guards, your opponent takes the damage as long as they have 4 damage or less. So if they're at 4, they're going to be at 5 guaranteed. It's Counterblast 2, so it's expensive, but to bring your opponent to 5 means that they have to guard everything or they'll die. Because you can never depend on a miracle heal. But you should expect them. You should expect them, not the opponent. Like, it's like one of those things where it's like, you should expect your opponent to miracle heal, but never expect yourself to miracle heal. Doesn't matter what your opponent does, guys, ever. It only matters how you react to it. The Aerial Divine Skyknight Ultimile, flip over an Aerial Divine Knight, Divine Knight Skyknight Ultimile. Your front row gets plus 3k, and if you have 2 or more in the G zone, what can happen is you can search out a grade 2, put it onto the field, it gets plus 5k. In this case, by the way, you always want to get this guy, unless you can summon out another unit and activate this guy's ability, because he doesn't activate himself. But I don't know how you'll do that, but I'm just saying that no matter how, if you do it, that's how you want to do it. There we go. Finally, 4 dragons. And what these guys do is they add 4 to every column, and they can make your Vanguard hit over about 41,000 if you have 5 rear guards. So basically, you stride over the Alfred, plus 2k to every rear guard. So what this means is this. Let's say that you summon something out with LaRousse, and you have this and this. It means 30k. But if you have this and this, what is previously 23k becomes 27k. See how it works there? And that's more power, more greatness, more victory, so on and so forth. Right now, our limit to the G zone is 8. However, it will boost up to 16 soon. In which case, you want to add 4 G Guardians. G Guardians, you pay a heal, you summon a G Guardian from your G zone, and it defends you for about 15 to 20,000 guard. As long as you and your opponent are both at grade 3. Also, we have more Madus and Atmos, which gives plus 10k for a single Counterblast. By the way, you might say, what about Blizza? Well, here's the thing. The last card in your deck should be an Atmos at 16, if you want to go that way. So, but Blizza, you have to flip over another card. By the way, at the point that you're thinking about seriously running Blizza and things, you have to realize how much guard will your opponent have in hand. Guess what? If they have a perfect shield, Blizza's worthless. But if they don't have a perfect shield, it's the power that you can put out. Boosting it to 50k will be the same as boosting it to 30k because of the lack of guard that they have. More Galblade. Galblade is on hit, summon a grade 2. And Giron. When this unit is placed in the Vanguard circle, choose a card from your hand called to rear guard, choose a unit, plus 5k. You don't even have to choose a rear guard to put in the hand. You can just give somebody plus 5k. I mean, sorry, put it in the field. But, you kind of want to do it because of this guy, Grawl, and LaRousse. Hey! See what I did there? So what'll happen is, what I recommend though is when it comes out as 16, 4 G Guardians, 4 of these guys remain the same. 4 G Guardians for these guys, and then for your remainder, maybe 2 more of him and 2 what's called Saint Blow. What Saint Blow Dragon does is that if you have 3 or more units that are Royal Paladins, 2 or more rear guards that are Royal Paladins, he gets a critical, and he gets plus 3k for every Royal Paladin that you have. That's a rear guard, I think. And he's a good game ender. However, again, it's one of those arguments of, do they have a perfect shield? If so, doesn't matter too much. Whew. I'm nearly done, guys. I've been doing this in one sitting, believe it or not. So I've explained G guards. By the way, G guards, if you want to hit 20k every time, have a grade 2 in front so that it becomes a 31k guard instead of just a whatever guard, and you have to spend a heal for it. There's not much else to say about it. Sorry, guys. I've been talking too long to talk about it too much. And I'll talk about it, by the way, when I cover strides in another video. You should stride once per game, but everything else should be legioning. This deck, by the way, this card also removes the status of lock from all of your cards. Whenever you stride, you undelete. This deck has power, recovers from lock, field retire, and just about everything else you'll fight. It'll recover from everything. Doesn't matter what it is. But you gotta be careful. It's a little slow. It doesn't really use the strides as well as other decks do. It's consistent, it works, and it's cheap. It's a great start for any card fighter. It's mostly commons and rares from a recent set, but also some other commons and rares that are still floating around in the system. I did make sure that every single one of these cards can be found with a Google search. You must take these cards and let the philosophies of the winning image be your guide. Ask yourself these questions when you're building your own deck. Are all my cards working together for the image of my grade 3s? Are any cards weaker than any other cards of the same kind? Are there any obvious weaknesses? Are your columns hitting numbers? Are you drawing enough cards? Be serious. Nothing is too small to overlook. Remember, you are bad. Make sure you choose the right cards every time. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time, and you're going to lose all your games. Remember, when I said earlier, I gave this kid like 3 or 4 cards that his deck sorely needed. All of a sudden, he goes from like losing it all the time to winning more games. Can you recover from a setback? In fact, that's one of the easiest things this deck can do. Can I recover from a setback? If so, how? Can I kill my opponent even if I'm set back? The answer with this deck is yes. Lastly, do I know how these cards interact to their fullest extent? Am I skillful enough to play this deck? I am bad, but I am skillful enough to play this deck. Normally when I say I am bad, it is not qualified by anything. I am bad, but I am skillful enough to play this deck. Remember that when you are looking to humble yourself so that you can learn how to play this game, which is what I Am Bad is about, you need to know what your capabilities are and never shoot above your capabilities in a serious tournament. I've done this before. I've chosen decks in tournaments that, I really shouldn't have been playing, and I lost because of it. I lost regionals because I chose stupid decks, when I should have chosen something else. And everyone goes through that. Everyone must know how to choose the best deck for them, which is going to be my next show. So let's go over those questions one last time, then I'll let you go, okay? Are all my cards working together towards the winning image of my grade 3s? Are any of my cards weaker than the cards of the same kind? Are there any obvious weaknesses? Are your columns hitting numbers? Are you not drawing enough cards? Be serious. Nothing is too small to overlook. Is my deck working? Are there any weaknesses? Can I recover from a setback? If so, how can I recover from a setback? Can I kill my opponent even if I'm set back? And lastly, how do I know these cards interact to their fullest extent? Am I skillful enough to play this deck? Alright. Ben Wheeler, the Mercenary King, thank you for being with me for the second episode of Training with the King. The next episode will be up in a month or something. I don't know when. Whenever Ash does his thing. Good luck, guys. Ben Wheeler, the Mercenary King, out.